Hello? But he confessed, so surely the moral thing to do is to notify the police, right? No, I know I don't have to legally. It just feels like it's my ethical responsibility. Yeah, okay. Whatever you say, unnamed law firm.
Okay, you caught me. I wasn't really on the phone to the church's abuse helpline. And for those watching from the church over in the US, that opener is something that we here in the UK like to call satire. But attempts at satire to one side, the question does remain, what on earth is the Mormon Church's abuse helpline?
If you're new here, first, welcome. And second, you may not know that the Mormon Church, like many other religious groups, has institutionally struggled with the problem of abuse.
Both in how it handles the reporting of abuse to external authorities and how it deals with abuse within its own ranks. The helpline was set up to try and provide a resource for church leaders on that first point, because the church as an institution understands that its clergy are first likely to be the ones who encounter reports of abuse from both victims and perpetrators, and second, are lacking the formal training of other professional clergy. In fact, the church's lack of professional clergy in many settings is a point of pride, but it's also a point of contention, because senior church leaders are paid, despite many people having the impression that the church has no paid clergy.
I explained also that our church has no paid ministry.
But the ins and outs of who's paid and who's not is a topic for another time.
Now, because it's Mormon bishops and stake presidents that are likely to hear these reports of abuse, and because of their lack of ecclesiastical training, the church set up a helpline in 1995 to offer advice to these individuals about how they should proceed when they hear reports of abuse. And let's be really clear here, that helpline is just for bishops and stake presidents. It is just for church leadership. There is no helpline for general church membership or even the public, as Mike Rezendes found out.
Hello, church operator.
Hi, I'm trying to reach the Mormon abuse hotline.
Are you a bishop?
No, I'm not. I was just hoping to talk to someone on the helpline and get some information.
So we don't have an abuse helpline for just general membership. It's just for bishops or stake presidents.
But if you do get through, because you are a church leader and the initial call handler determines that you need to, then you will invariably speak with a lawyer who has been hired by the church to field the call.
And it's the legal advice, more specifically the quality and the motivation of that legal advice, that has been in the news over the years. A prominent example is the case of Paul Adams in Arizona, where questions were raised around whether the bishops who heard his confessions and then called the church helpline should have also called the authorities as well.
I'm not here to pass judgment on the advice given by the helpline. Doing so in a legally responsible way would be too detailed of a tangent for right now. But what is significant is that the operational mechanics of the helpline were the subject of multiple legal proceedings that involved sworn testimony being provided by the church's representatives relating to the operation of the helpline. In particular, testimony was given around what was done with the records of the calls that came in. Rytting and other church officials have said in sworn testimony that the helpline either keeps no records or destroys all records at the end of the day. Now that statement comes from the records of a separate case in West Virginia. The other church official was Roger Van Komen, the church's director of family services, who said in an affidavit included in the sealed records of that West Virginia case, those notes are destroyed by the end of every day. The notes he is referring to are notes of calls made to the church's helpline.
Now, the Paul Adams case involved calls to the helpline that took place between 2010 and 2013. Those sworn statements made by church representatives saying that they kept no records of the calls, or that if they did, they were then destroyed by the end of the next day, those were in reference to calls to the helpline made between 2004 and 2013.
So if the church representatives are being honest in their statements, then we can expect the church would have no notes or records of calls made between 2004 and 2013. Well, here enters Beau Oyler.
In an interview with YouTube channel Soft White Underbelly, Beau talked about his experience calling the church helpline in 2013.
And I hang up the phone with Kurt McConkie, which is the abuse line to protect kids, right? Like protect the abused. And it wasn't that at all. It was to protect the church. It was look up the legality of where you are and how can we protect the church. Not one single question around, is the child okay?
And the church has taken umbrage with his recollection of events in an albeit somewhat delayed response. Nevertheless, they are claiming to have records of the calls that Beau made, and they're even calling them Helpline records as opposed to records held by the church's lawyers or anything else like that.
But hold up, how have they managed to dig up records that, as far as we've been able to establish, shouldn't exist? Remember, church officials say that they don't keep any records of the reports to the helpline.
How do they now suddenly have records of calls made in 2013 by Beau Oyler, when in reference to other calls made around a similar time, the church claims to keep no records of such calls?
And here's an extra thought, having read through the church's response to Beau. The church says Beau makes the following accusation: the helpline exists to protect the church rather than the victims of abuse. On this point, could an argument not be made from a legal perspective, which is probably Dan H. Oakes' favourite perspective, that because the church helpline is staffed by lawyers who, as far as I can determine, do not engage those calling the helpline as clients, that then the church is those lawyers' client? And if the church is their client, would it not be some sort of legal malpractice for the lawyers to have anything other than the church's best interests as their top priority? That would mean that the only way in which the helpline can operate would be to prioritise the needs and protection of the church over the needs and protection of victims of abuse. But that's just my thoughts, and let me know what yours are in the comments.
Now, I pride myself on a good segue, but this week really is an uphill battle. And that little hill is nothing compared to Zion National Park and southern Utah, where I will be travelling with 12 of you on a trip run by the lovely people over at Trover. Tickets to that are on sale now, and I really hope to see some of you there. There's even an early bird discount for the first lot of you to sign up. And well, as for the rest of you, well, if this is the second, third, fourth or fifth time you've watched one of my videos, then I recommend you probably keep that proud tradition going by checking out this video here.
Also, apologies for the random swapping of clothing throughout the studio portions. Some segments needed to be re-recorded due to some frame rate issues, and to be honest, I think I just need to get a new camera for the studio. So if you'd like to help in that endeavour, please donate to my donor box. Cheers.